All right, folks, welcome to Nino's Corner.tv. This is going to make FluffTube. I read you I told you about the rules and regulations that we have to do for FluffTube. Keep the punches high, no punches below the belt. In case of a knockdown, run to the neutral corner, no standing 8 count. Told them the whole thing. Folks, this is going to be a good one. This is basically what I like to say the beginning, where it all began after World War II, the 50s, the 60s revolution, free love, drugs, sex, the Beatles. We're going to cover all of that, the music industry, the Doors, Jim Morrison, and how it all led into, what did you say, a giant, I guess it's always been a giant psyop into leading into today, and how it engineered us into what engineering programming society for decades to lead us to where we are right now, breaking up the family, the whole thing. Everyone, I'm introducing Mike Williams, correct? Mike Williams?
That's correct, David.
Man, so you have a very popular channel called Sage of Quay on Rumble, correct?
Well, it's YouTube, Rumble, BitChutes. I've got.
Wow, you're on
platforms.
YouTube? I didn't know you were on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. Yep.
Well, folks, show him some love. Go to his channel, Sage of Quay. Man, I'm really excited about this because I'm intrigued by this. I want to start off with, I guess, could we, I know about like certain projects like Project Paperclip and things of that nature. Where can we start with this? How do we take people down the road of how society has been engineered and basically groomed through this whole time to be where we're at right now, breaking up the family, free love, free sex, drugs, alcohol, the whole thing, ruin America? I mean, that was the objective, correct?
Yeah, that's the objective. So I guess we could go back to the early 1900s, David, right when we had the Industrial Revolution. And what folks have to understand is there is a controlling network, a controlling apparatus that runs the show. So folks who believe that the president runs the country or a prime minister runs the country, those are just figureheads in front of the curtain. So like in The Wizard of Oz, you got to pierce the veil, look behind the curtain to see the great Oz. And going back to World War I, first of all of the wars that are created by the controllers to benefit the controllers. This is something else that we have to understand. So our entire reality, everything, just about everything that we interact with, from the standpoint of touch points and going shopping, buying a car, buying a house, buying land, going to work, that is all controlled by them. This is their reality. They have put it in place. And we operate within it. Like many people don't understand that, as an example, when you buy property, you never actually own the property. Right. You rent it. Take a look at the contract that you signed. That's why there's property taxes. Property taxes is a perpetual lien against the property that many people believe that they own. So as an example, if you have a house on your property and you pay your house off, try not paying your property taxes.
Exactly.
In most states, not only will they look to take the property, but they're going to also attempt to take your house and sell it. So I'm just pointing that out to try to put a frame around what we're talking about here. So back in the early 1900s, there was a gentleman by the name of Aleister Crowley.
The Satan worshiper, correct?
Yeah, Aleister was an occultist, a black magician, and he also is the founder of the religion Thelema. And as Crowley went about his ways, he was also a British agent working with the British military and intelligence during World War I. As an occultist, he was held in very high esteem by those that are in power. Without getting into a lot of great detail here, because we can do an entire show on what Crowley was all about.
Do you think we could dive deeper on Nino's Corner.tv so we could do so we don't have to be so censored at some point?
Yeah. I'm going to we won't get censored on this.
This is going to be kind of like a broad brush stroke over everything.
Broad brush, right.
I would like to go into like segments on Nino's Corner if you're open to it. on
Sure.
ninoscorner.tv and really dive deep into this and make it a series.
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
So what Crowley did, and the reason why I'm just setting it up, is he had an ideology, he had a philosophy that goes back to the Egyptian mysteries. And what we have to understand is all of this control mechanism, the people that are within it, especially the higher up the chain you go, they're occultists. The world is run by occultists. So Crowley had to find a new age, what he called the Eon of Horus, and what many people are referring to today as the Age of Aquarius. Prior to the Age of Aquarius was the Age of Pisces. And Crowley defined that as the Age of Osiris. Now, in his teachings and his philosophy, he put forth a premise that the old age is ending. The Age of Pisces is ending, what roughly equates to his Age of Osiris, and a new age is coming about. It's the Age of Horus. It's the Eon of Horus, the Age of Aquarius. Now, because they're occultists, there's a process of alchemy in order to bring about transformation. That alchemical process says that when you move from one point, point A to point B, in this case, from one age or one eon, the Eon of Horus or the Age of Pisces to the Eon of, the Eon of Osiris to the Eon of Horus, or the Age of Pisces to the Age of Aquarius, it's not just a matter of just moving there. You have got to break down and remove everything from the previous age. Mm. You can't have any remnants of the old if you're going to bring in the new. So what we're going through and what we have been going through, especially, I put the stake in the ground since 1960, but it was going on before 1960. But 1960 is when they started putting the pedal to the metal. So what they're doing is they're systematically breaking down the old structures, the traditional values, as an example, family values, going after, quote, institutionalized religions, in particular Christianity, because it was the most dominant. And so they're breaking it all down, and they invert. They take, as an example, they'll take a lot of Christian symbolism and
the peace sign.
Yes, and they will invert it.
That's the inverted cross broken, correct?
Inverted cross, exactly. Even today, but the rainbow is flipped. It's inverted. That's all I'm going to say.
That's correct.
It's
You're right.
Because the rainbow represents the chakras within the human body. There's 7 primary energy centers within the body. And the top is purple. Red is the base chakra, but it's flipped. Right? If your crown chakra, purple, is enlightenment, it's awakening, and it's turned upside down. Okay, so
wow.
So what we're going through is an alchemical process that the cultic elite practice and what they're putting forth in order to bring about their new age. Now, their new age is, many people are going to refer to it as the New World Order or the One World Government, but it's going to exist with a lot fewer people. What they're looking for are people that follow their philosophy or their ideology. In other words, literalists. That's what they're looking for. They don't want anybody that's going to cut across the grain and give them any problems. So they're looking for a world where they've got their congregation and they're all singing out of
a hive mind.
A hive mind, exactly. Right, a hive mind, and we see this
where AI controls it all.
Yes, yes, where the
no
AI
free thinkers, nobody out, no one to give their voice, their opinions. Everyone stands in line. Everyone does what they're told, type of thing, like drones.
Right. So, well, they're going to use that as a way to segue from the old age to the new age, the AI. I think once they get to their new age, they'll still have the technology, but it'll be used in a different way, because in their minds they're going to have a population that's going to be bought into their tenets, into their philosophy. So I think the technology at that point will be shifted over to be beneficial to their needs in general, versus using it as a way in which to get rid of people, to socially transform or engineer the population.
Wow.
Okay, so this is a whole process. Now, we've all heard about 2030, Agenda 2030, which is a checkpoint within Agenda 21. So Agenda 21 is the overall transformative plan that they have in place. So
I thought
2030.
Agenda 21 kind of went bunk, so they kicked it to 2030. I mean,
No, Agenda 21 is still in play. Think of Agenda 21 as the total project plan.
okay.
And Agenda 2030 is a checkpoint within the overall project plan. So after 2030, there'll be Agenda 2040, 2050, 2060, 70, and so on. I believe that their goal is by the time they get to the year 2100, that's their plan. That's when they believe they'll have the entire thing, the world transformed.
So they're patient. They're very patient.
Oh yeah. They plan not only decades but centuries in advance, and because all of the people and the organizations that run the world, they're bloodlined. Okay, so they just keep passing the baton along, and they view it as time is on their side. And that's how they do their transformative process.
Because
So,
you would think that, they would be eager to see the fruition of what they're laying, the seeds they're planting. They'd be wanting to see this. And so you're telling me that they're just so patient that they just depend on their bloodline to where they understand that they need to be patient and let this process play out all the way to really come to the end result, which will be 2100.
yes. So we
Wow.
have to understand, folks, that there are two different worlds. There's the world we operate in, which I refer to as living outside the pyramid of power. So they're inside the pyramid of power. We're outside of it. Their world is inside. And the two worlds are completely different. They get different education. It's just a whole different way of life and perspective about what life and living is all about. In their minds, they are the ultimate controllers. It's them.
So what do you say to people that are Christians that are watching, my audience that's watching right now, these people that are inside the pyramid, as you say, do they know the absolute truth of existence? Do they understand how the matrix works? Or is it really a battle of good and evil?
It's a battle. It is a battle of good and evil. It's a spiritual battle.
So they don't really contain the truth then. It's not like they're keeping the truth within themselves and not sharing it because that's how they control the power. This really is an evil versus good dynamic here, right? That's what's going on here.
It's both, David. So
okay.
They know the truth about existence, reality. Okay, they go back to the ancient mysteries. So in the case of Aleister Crowley, he goes back to the Egyptian mysteries, but it also goes back to Babylon. It goes back to the Greek and the Romans, all of that. So they have all of this stuff understood. That's what I'm saying. Their world is very different. They tell us that the mysteries and the gods of mythology are all comic book types of stuff. Don't pay any attention to that. Those gods never really existed. That's something you go to a movie to go watch. You go watch Thor, as an example.
Right.
I never discounted mythology because mythology, through history, going back to the ancients, this was a way that they were able to express the true structure of reality. See, the controllers want to put everything into the five senses. If you can't see it, feel it, it doesn't exist. And that's absolutely not true. So what they do is they keep information and truth from us. They know the truth. I'm not saying that, that they're using it for good. They're just keeping it from us so that we don't get any smarter and we don't have any leverage in order to really be able to fight back the way we need to fight back, even though we're making a lot of progress. I'll say that. A lot of people are becoming at least aware, and there are those people who are becoming
It's almost like
awake.
me being an alcoholic is being aware of it, understanding like that's a problem, and then you can fix it. But you got to be aware of it first.
Yes, you have to be aware of it first. You have to have that awareness. And from there, that's the first step on the ladder. And then you climb up the ladder and you get further and further down the road, you gain more and more knowledge, more and more wisdom, and you start to figure this whole thing out. So that's what they do. They keep information from us. And because they're occultists and because they go back to the ancient mysteries, they're also knee deep into magic and ritual. See, that's the other thing. A lot of folks don't believe that that stuff is real. They think
that's where you lose a lot of people right there.
yeah. They think it's just Harry Potter stuff. But they practice ritual and occultism every single day. Every day.
I've heard even before they put an album out, before they make a movie, they put a spell on that.
Yes. This was
and
something.
That right there, people just look at that and they go, "Oh, I'm turning this off." No, this is real.
No, I mean, look, when you try to explain to people about ritual sacrifice, they don't think that's real. If you try to talk to them about the trafficking, they don't think that's real. See, the problem is people, they disconnect from it. They go into denial. And many times it's because of the conditioning, because you've been told your entire life that stuff doesn't really exist. Or you do know it exists, but you have cognitive dissonance. You just don't want to deal with it.
It's just an overload. It's an overload on your psyche, and you just turn it off.
It could become extremely overwhelming, and then people just get on with their lives. One of the tricks of the trade that the controllers do, part of their whole occultism and their ritual and their magic and all that stuff, is to keep you busy. It's to keep you busy with inane stuff. It's to keep you distracted. It's to keep you in front of your television set. It's to keep you engaged with music. It's to keep you worshiping the lesser gods. So the lesser gods,
bread and circus.
Bread and circus, right?
So that's why athletes are paid so much money, because they are the chesters. Or the jesters. Is it jesters or chesters?
The jesters, yes.
Yeah, the jesters, yeah.
So, but what happens is people worship the athletes. People worship the politicians. People worship the Silicon Valley icons, the so-called icons. They worship their entertainers, their celebrities. They worship all of these people. So when you worship folks, what you're doing is you are disempowering yourself, because you are giving up your authority.
Can I just say something here? I think now it's gotten even worse in the last 5 years with Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, because now people are into self-worship. Everyone thinks they are a celebrity. It started with the reality shows, and now everyone thinks they have their own reality show on their Instagram channel or on their Facebook or on their TikTok. Everyone thinks they're famous, man. The narcissism is off the charts.
Yeah, they're narcissists. It's a narcissistic society. That's what the controllers have created. So social media was created by the controllers. Everything that you interact with was put in place by them. And it's all put in place to do a couple of things. One is to distract you. Two, it is to dumb you down. Three, if you're on Facebook, Instagram, and all these other social media applications, these platforms, they are data collection entities.
DARPA funded, right?
And the CIA. And in fact, Facebook was funded by the CIA to get started. So whenever you're interacting on social media, what happens is all of this information is being funneled into the AI. And this allows them to be able to really get a much better understanding. They're really starting to get pinpointed now with regard to human behavior, how humans will react, how they will behave given a certain set of circumstances or situations. What in all likelihood is going to happen? So the AI is going to kick out a couple of scenarios. Here's scenario A, B, or C if you do this. Which of the three scenarios is most likely? Well, then, the AI is going to say B is probably the most likely if you set that particular plan in place.
Which this makes complete sense now why Elon bought Twitter, and he's allowing so-called free speech to go on that platform, because now he's getting all the data he needs.
Yeah. So don't be fooled.
So by eliminating the data, which they were doing, is eliminating the process of AI, is eliminating the potential of the AI that he is creating.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're saying Musk is gathering up data. Is that what you're?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What he's doing is the monster, the most monstrous data dump ever is happening right now on Twitter, and they're collecting everyone's data by saying
Yes.
it's free speech, and what it's doing ultimately is just collecting everything,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Damn,
I had a
Google
guy
is
on. I had a
scary.
guy on about 7 or 8 years ago. Used to work for Google, and he told me that Google was scraping data every which way from Sunday, and not just from Google products. So if you were using a non-Google browser, as an example, people were thinking, "Well, I'm safe. I'm not using a Google. I'm not using Chrome." And he said, "Wrong." He said, because anything that Google was plugged into, was attached to, was fair game in Google's mind to scrape data. Now, that's going back about 8 years ago, David. So think about where they've gone since. Now, all of
How,
this,
how
all
do
of
we
this,
win against something like this, man?
this is the thing. We can win this, but people have to wake up. People have to stop participating in all of this garbage that they're giving us. Get off of Facebook. Get off of all of these platforms. Now, I'm not saying, if every once in a while you're going to connect to a family member or something like that, although you could still give your family member a call, or if they live close enough, you could drive by and actually talk to them face to face. That is a novel idea, right?
Yeah.
But we have to disconnect from this stuff. So part of the plan and part of the strategy of the control is convenience. It's to make things very convenient, because convenience then creates the the feeling that you don't really have to do much. You become docile, and at times many people even become apathetic. You were talking about before about the overflow, being overwhelmed by the level of information. If you become aware or awake, that's what happens to some people. Some of them just shut down, and then
Right.
apathy sets in. Right. So this is the plan they have in place is full spectrum dominance. That's what it's referred to. But we can break the code. And the thing is, we have to push back. We have to not participate in their schemes. We have to become aware when a psychological operation has been put into play. We have to learn to say, no, I'm not doing that. We have to resist. And of course, for a lot of people, it's difficult because they're fearful. They're afraid something bad's going to happen to them if they push back or if they say no. But you're not going to win this by being fearful. You're going to have to push through the fear. And is there going to be some pain? Yeah, there's going to be some pain. I'm not saying it's not easy street. Nothing worth attaining, achieving is ever easy. It's not going to be handed to you on a silver platter. So all of this scheming, all of this strategy, all of this social engineering, all of this social transformation emanates out of Tavistock. Before we started, you asked me about Tavistock. So Tavistock is in the business of mind control, brainwashing, and social engineering. It got its start back in the 1920s. It was connected into, and still is today, British military, British intelligence. And then it became the Tavistock Institute in 1947. Sigmund Freud was their poster child. And Tavistock's tentacles are everywhere. They have brought into their fold, they have adopted occultism as part of their approach and ways of doing things. Drugs is a big, big piece of
Well, let's
Tavistock's.
start with the beginning here. Can we kick it off with the 50s, 60s,
Yeah,
and take it from there, and then take my audience through this process?
yeah. So we had the process. I told you about Aleister Crowley, and he's got his Aeon of Horus on the horizon, and that's what they're looking for. That's how they're defining the Age of Aquarius. That's how they are defining it. That's not necessarily how it's supposed to pan out. Everything they do, David, is not organic. Everything they do is not natural. Everything they do is engineered. Okay? So starting in the 1950s, I'll just start with 50s. We'll talk about Elvis as an example. They were all put in place, whether the artists knew it or not, as part of a social engineering initiative to alter the very fabric of our society and our culture. And I'm talking about worldwide. So when Elvis came onto the stage and, he's shaking on the stage with his hips and all that stuff. I mean, this was something that was not seen before, mainstream. And, when we look back at it now, we think, oh, that's just, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah,
But we,
compared to now, but that's exactly what they wanted. Where we're at
right.
now.
And they're very, very methodical and incremental and very, very smart about how they go about this. Everything they do starts at a small point. They just can't hit everybody over the head with a hammer initially, because people will wake up and they'll say, hey, wait a minute, what is that? So they start small and then they start building. It's like walking up a staircase. So we get past Elvis, we get past the 1950s, and Tavistock creates the Beatles.
Before you get into the Beatles, Elvis, you're saying, was part of this process? Was he?
Yeah.
Was he a CIA creation?
Yeah, he was a Tavistock creation.
Wasn't he? Wasn't he trying to change, like switch? Wasn't he? I heard. Now this is a rumor. I don't know if this is true, but I've heard rumors that he was complaining about the CIA being involved in the music industry, and he started voicing out about it and speaking to people about it. He was very concerned.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard those stories too.
Because then that would make me believe that maybe he was off.
Well, he could have been. Absolutely, he could have been, and that's why I said the artists are participating in their scheme, whether they know it or not, knowingly or unknowingly. So even in the case, let's just say the story about Elvis is true, and he suspects that something is up, that there are people lurking around that he's uncomfortable with, but he's still in the game. He's still singing. He's still doing his deal. Right. So you can question all you want, Elvis, but you're still marching along to what they're asking you to do.
Right.
Right. So this is the thing. Even when people are sensing that something is off, they're still on that path. Many times it's because, hey, there's a paycheck. Number one, exactly. Yeah, there's money. There's money.
It's money.
Right.
Money.
It's money. Money is the carrot.
Money, fame, pussy, everything. They go for it all.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to give them what they perceive as all the pleasures of the material world.
Yeah. How can you go against that? Anybody,
right?
Is going to fall into it. 100%.
And you're young, especially when you're young.
When you're young,
right? So and then, like I said, it led into the Beatles, and the Beatles were huge because really the Beatles were the first major music, pop rock initiative that Tavistock put out there that was defined to change the world, transform the world worldwide.
So it wasn't Elvis, really. It was the Beatles. That was the big one.
Elvis was think of Elvis as kind of a precursor.
Yeah, he started moving his hips a little bit, but I mean, the Beatles were kind of, to me, like, eh.
Yeah, but what the Beatles did was that the Beatles brought in, it was a completely different style of music. So when the Beatles are first brought in, like I mentioned before, David, what they do is they start at a basic level. So when you listen to the Beatles' first album, as an example, Please Please Me, you're getting basic rock and roll, pop stuff, right? You're thinking, all right, well, how bad can that be? But, it was the clothing, it was the hair, it was during the interviews, it was the attitude. The attitude was, if you think about it, if you go back and play the old interviews, there was pushback against the establishment. There was, that started to come across in the interviews of not only the Beatles, but the Rolling Stones were also a creation of Tavistock, as well as the entire British invasion, the bands going back into the 1960s, going into the 70s, as well as all of the other genres that followed. We have punk rock, we have glam, metal, hard rock, techno, rap. It's all part of Tavistock's agenda because they know that each genre of music has a certain runway, shelf life.
Right, and regarding rap and hip hop, I've met Rick Ross.
Okay.
I've talked to Rick Ross in at the fights many times.
Yeah.
And he told me how the CIA was completely involved in hip hop.
Absolutely.
And in
yes, absolutely. So the turning point for the Beatles, as far as their impact to social engineering, was the psychedelic era. So in 1967, which was referred to as the Summer of Love, that's when LSD was introduced into the mainstream of society, full blown. It started with the Monterey Pop Festival, which was organized by John Phillips, the guy that's playing Paul McCartney, whose real name is Billy Shears, Billy
Do you
Campbell,
really
Billy
believe
Shepherd.
Paul McCartney died or he was murdered or what?
Yeah,
You think there's an actor playing McCartney right now?
yeah. So the
I
guy,
don't know anything about it. I've heard this.
yeah. So just quickly, I know I don't want to
No, it's okay.
detour
I'm
here.
so intrigued, dude. You have no idea.
Yeah. So the guy that's playing Paul McCartney today is not the original biological Paul McCartney. The original Paul McCartney was replaced. He disappeared back in 1966, late 1966.
Wow.
So the way the conspiracy goes is that he was killed in a car crash. But again, that's just how the conspiracy goes.
Do you know why they would want to take him out? Was he seeing the truth behind the scenes and he was growing a conscience, maybe, or why would he be taken out?
He was part of a. I'll give you based upon my research. There are going to be people who have different opinions on this thing, but based upon my research, the Beatles were a very occulted entity, and I'm not talking about the individuals themselves, but I'm talking about the controlling apparatus all around the Beatles. It's knee deep in Crowleyism. It's knee deep in occultism. So biological Paul McCartney, in all likelihood, was part of a ritual sacrifice.
Wow.
And in fact, for people who are interested, I have nothing to do with this book. Okay, I'm not getting any money from it or anything. But this is the book. It's the Memoirs of Billy Shears.
Wow.
Written by Thomas E. U. Harriot. Now, it's classified as historical fiction.
I can tell you've been researching it. You got thumb notes, paper notes.
Oh yeah, I've been looking at this book since 2016. There's been a number of editions that have come out, David. The person behind this book is the person that's playing the role of Paul McCartney.
Wow.
Okay, so all I'll say is, if you're interested in this conspiracy, if you're interested in the replacement of Paul McCartney, what is referred to as the Paul is dead conspiracy, I call it the McCartney conspiracy and the Beatles conspiracy, you might want to take a look at this book. But the Beatles' main impact was the introduction of the psychedelic era, the introduction of drugs into the culture. And they had a major, major impact, especially with the release of their album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And so, of course, we had a cast
all their
of
songs
characters.
really have an impact in meaning, right? There's an undertone. There's a meaning behind each of and every one of their songs, like Lucy and the Sky with Diamonds. I mean, they all have a meaning that are part of this agenda, correct? That
Yeah.
give into this agenda, right?
Yeah. So
like a spell. What would you call it?
Yeah. So it's interesting. You should ask this, and you have never read this book, right? I just showed you. Okay.
No, I've never read it.
So starting when Billy joined the band in late 1966, Paul allegedly died September 11th, 1966. So September 11th is a very occulted date in the occult. So when Billy took over the band, all of the songs during his period as a Beatle from 67 through 1970 had to do with the death of Paul McCartney. And of course, many of these clues are very subliminal. So it's not going to be obvious by just listening to the songs. If you buy the book, he tells you exactly what to look for in the songs to pick up the death clues and the theme or the thread they have with regard to biological Paul's death. That goes back to what you were saying before about the occultism that is in music. So when you think about it, what's going on with the Beatles' music, especially from 67 through 1970, is we are getting that occultism, that thread running through the songs all the time. So people are singing them, they're being played on the radio. We have tons and tons of tribute bands today keeping that ritual alive. That's really what it is. And I know it sounds really crazy to a lot of folks. Folks, let me just explain.
No, it doesn't.
Before 2016, before I read the first edition of that book, I was drinking Beatle Kool-Aid, okay? I was a huge Beatle freak. I'm a songwriter, I'm a musician, and they were the basis of everything I did musically. Take a look behind me. Look at I got the Abbey Road sign still above my
Yeah.
head. Okay. And then I woke up and I started looking into it. But the Beatles were really the foundation. They were foundational to all of the music and the genres that came forth after them. Because as I mentioned, the Beatles were steeped in the philosophy of Aleister Crowley, his religion Thelema, and occultism, which includes ritual, ceremony, numerology, gematria, alchemy,
So
all of that
do you
stuff.
think Elvis Presley hated the Beatles because not just because they stole his thunder, but because of this?
I don't know. It's that's a good question. It's possible. It's possible that Elvis knew that the Beatles were not organic. It's possible that he knew that they were a construct of Tavistock, that they were put together. I've done research on this where I have done two major presentations on my channels. I have a Paul is Dead channel. I have my regular Sage of Quay channel, where I put forth the theory that the Beatles did not write all of their own music and they did not play on all of their own recorded tracks. This turned a lot of people's worlds upside down, but I believe that the evidence that I put forth is very compelling. And what I tell my audience is, you don't have to take my word for it. Watch the presentations, see if it resonates with you, and then go off and go do your own research to either validate or, or you think you can debunk it, knock yourself out. But I've been at this a long time. So it's possible that, again, I'm just throwing this out there. I have no idea what Elvis was thinking or not,
Right.
but
I'm just
he may have
talking about.
just said, well, I know this is not real.
Yeah.
And in Elvis's mind, perhaps he thought that he came up through the ranks more organically. And so, perhaps that was, his train of thought, but I really don't know. But music, David, and entertainment. We talk about entertainment, of course, we're talking about Hollywood. And I know you know all about, the whole Hollywood entertainment piece of this. I mean, being in boxing, you're going to see a lot of stuff. I'm very good friends with Vince, and who was in Vince Russo, who was in the wrestling business. And Vince told me all about what was going on, what goes on in the wrestling business. It's all entertainment too.
Yeah.
But in any case, music is used, folks, to steer you. It's to give you a certain mindset. It's to get you to adopt certain morals, ethics, beliefs. It's to get you to move in a certain direction. It's to get you to go down a path that maybe,
Because it's all done through frequency and vibration, and we are
yes,
vibrational beings.
yes,
And that's how you program. That's how you insert. That's how you program through the vibration. Correct.
very important. Yes, music, sound is extremely important to human beings. So certain sounds put through music can subconsciously move you and steer you in a certain direction. Lyrics, backmasking, it's just a whole toolbox of stuff that they deploy in order to social engineer and transform societies and cultures.
Before we move more into that, let's talk about what about Jim Morrison, and because there's other groups that were spawned in the '60s, correct? Jim
Yeah,
Morrison, the Doors. I mean, I
yeah.
heard he was a CIA concoction as well.
Well, his father was the admiral that was involved in the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which kicked off the Vietnam War. Okay, so the Doors, Zappa. A lot of people don't like to hear this. Crosby, Stills, Nash and
ABBA, did you
Young,
say, or who? The Doors. Who else?
Frank Zappa.
Zappa. Okay.
A lot of people don't like to hear that because they believe that Frank was anti-establishment. Now, you know, there's a lot of things that Frank Zappa said that were anti-establishment, and I've seen all this stuff, and I have a lot of respect for some of the things that he said. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't controlled opposition either. We have to give that a consideration. I'm not saying he was. I'm just saying we have to give that consideration. We have to not shut any doors on this, folks, because what's going on today, if you can't see it, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. It's going to change. It's changing the very fabric of our reality and how your life and your kids' life and your grandchildren's lives are going to be. But you've got the Doors, you've got Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Frank Zappa, Jimi Hendrix. You've got the Beach Boys, you got the Monkees.
I mean, they couldn't all be involved, right? I mean, some of them, I mean, could they? I mean, I guess if you're going to sign on that dotted line with a record company, you basically
there were degrees of involvement, David.
Right,
so what?
right.
So there were degrees. So there are those that are they're placed in certain positions because they're bloodline. As an example, this guy Billy Shears, who's plays the part of Paul McCartney, he's in the system. He's bloodlined. He's supposed to be there. Okay, he was identified early on in his life to be in a position, a very powerful, influential position down the line, and he was shaped and molded to be there along the way. There are other artists that are not bloodlined, but they might be they might be in a secret society. So if you're in a secret society, as an example, you're a Freemason, right? And you have your oaths, which they call their obligations, then they're going to be developed as well because their oaths supersede and override anything else. So there's a very, very high level of confidence that they're going to stick to the game plan, given the positions that they're given, whether it be in bands, whether it be in entertainment, celebrities, actors, and stuff like that. Then you have this other tier. The other tier would be people that are not in secret societies and not bloodline. They're just folks that have some skill. They have some talent.
And they're used as useful idiots.
They're identified. Yeah, they're identified. They're plucked. So what happens is Tavistock keeps a pool of resource. They've got their tentacles everywhere. And they bring people in. Hey, we can do this with that person. If we shape them and mold them the way we need them to be shaped and molded, appearance-wise, the type of music or their acting, whatever it may be, we can move the agenda forward. They're going to help us move the agenda forward. And these folks, in all likelihood, are not even aware that they're doing this. Going back to bands for a moment, let me give you another example. There are bands that I'm sure that were, they were not sitting there on the sidelines with pom-poms rooting for the New World Order or the Illuminati, however you want to refer to the controllers, and they were putting music out. But their album covers reflected what? It reflected Illuminati and secret society symbolism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So
seen it over and over again.
Over and over again. So what happens is it's the packaging of the album, it's the album art, it's the way they dress, it's the whole it's just the whole theatrics. It's the presentation. That's probably how I should explain it. It's the entirety of the presentation, and you don't have to be in lockstep, but you are a participant. You're getting paid. You like the money. Hey, let's face it. Who doesn't want to be a rock star? Who doesn't want to be a famous band? I did when I was a kid. That's how I got into all this. So there are multiple tiers. There's 3 tiers. Those are the 3 I just mentioned. You're just a very talented person, and they pluck you out, and then they're going to do what they do to try to shape you and get you to where they want you to be, to do their work for them. There are those that are in secret societies, like I said, because of their oaths. Good bet, really, high odds that they're going to follow through because they have their oaths. And then you have those at the very top of the tier, the very top of the entertainment and music business, who are bloodlined one way or another. And they were identified very early on in their lives as being placed in very prominent positions. And this goes on everywhere. So, fame and fortune in this world is not achieved by luck. There is a machine behind it all. And this is what I try to explain to people about the Beatles too. You don't achieve that type or that level of prominence, fame, and fortune if you don't have a major league machine behind you pushing you along
to fulfill the agenda.
It just doesn't happen, David. I know you know this.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know this. There's a lot of people that they buy into these stories, the stories that you're given about how these bands started and how these celebrities got started and everything else. Most of those stories are nonsense. You know, they're highly fictional and fabricated.
You see the actors today, actors, musicians selling out to Biden. They're saying, okay, hey, look, my daughter, my son is identifies as this, that, and then or whatever. And I think that's them, that's them giving in the industry. I really believe that.
Because they have to,
Right.
because they sign on a dotted line. Now, we talked earlier before the show started. So if they bring you in, they dangle carrots all the time. So everything that you do, if you want to be famous, has got to be done because you consented to do it. They're not going to force you, but they will incent you.
Free will, correct?
It's free will.
You can be pressured, and if you
Yes.
fold, that's still your fault.
Right, because they'll dangle the carrot and they'll say, "Hey, look at all this money we've got for you if you take the next step on the ladder." But it's your free will that can say yes or no. So if you say no, then it's no. Then you don't get, the money that they're dangling in front of you or whatever else they're promising that you'll have if you take it. But then if you take it, then there are obligations. You're essentially contractually obligated to do what they tell you to do. Otherwise, you're in breach of whatever it is you signed.
And look at the corrosion of the music industry. I mean, look at it where it's at right now. I mean, I really thought like in the 90s that was like, wow, this is the most twisted decade there is. I remember living through the 90s thinking, it's I know it's going to get worse. I don't see how it's going to get worse. We had, gangster rap come in talking about killing police and shit like that. I'm like, how does it get any worse than that? Wow, I was wrong. Look at now. I mean, look what you have now. I mean, this was a process. This was a process to bring us to the culmination of where we're at right now of degenerate, deviant behavior that anything goes. And if you are a conservative, white, Christian, whatever, male especially, you are deemed the demon, the epitome of a demon. They look down upon you. And this is all, I really saw it kick off hard, really hard, was with the NWA. And the gangster rap, and then go into the, you had the hair bands, and then that ended with an abrupt boom, Nirvana, the 90s kickoff of the grunge scene and gangster rap, and then it went into MTV raps, and then now look where we're at.
Right. Just think of the names of the genres, David. Grunge, punk, glam. Right. David Bowie was introduced because David Bowie was the beginning of testing the waters for androgyny.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right, glam bands.
Or Queen. Queen.
And Queen. Yeah. Right, Elton John. Elton was like the Liberace of rock, right?
Yeah,
him and Freddie, right? Freddie Mercury. And then you had the glam bands, and that was the introduction. Men dressing up as women.
Oh, you mean the hair? Boom! There you go. You're right.
Okay.
So a lot of people will say like, that's just the natural process of music. You're saying absolutely not.
No, that's not natural at all. I mean, why is it natural that a man would go dress up and look like a woman with big hair and makeup and go out and play guitar?
Right.
All of these genres are created. It's a strategy that emanates out of Tavistock. Tavistock rolls in under the Committee of 300. Okay, so the Committee of 300 are 300 people. They call themselves the Olympians. Okay, that's how much they think of themselves. Okay,
right.
Read this book by John Coleman, The Committee of 300. This is the 3rd edition. I think there's 5 editions out. The 4th and 5th are difficult to get, and if you do find them, they're expensive. He lays it all out. Coleman was an insider, used to be with British intelligence. He lays it all out. If you want to learn about Tavistock, David Esterlin's book is a good book. I don't agree with everything that David has in the book, but 95% of what he has in here is rock solid. So I just want to let people know that, when I talk about this stuff, I'm just not, pulling it out of my butt.
Can we go into more detail on ninoscorner.tv? Can we do a series on this? I would love to dive deep. I'd like to get your thoughts on Michael Jackson. The whole thing, man. You seem to be an expert in this field, so.
Well, actually, I mean, my expertise is actually with the Beatles. I mean, I could talk to a lot of these other artists and stuff like that, but I have another colleague who can talk to a lot of this stuff. That's Mark Devlin.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can have me, or you can have
Can I
Mark,
get you on together?
or Mark and I, yeah, on together. And we could
I would
talk about this
love to
stuff.
dive deep into this, man.
I mean, I think Mark has written 3 books on the music industry.
Do you know? So let's just do a little pivot real quick because
Yeah,
I know we're coming to a close here. The movie industry, okay,
yeah,
that's just as powerful, if not more powerful,
oh
correct?
yeah,
Because they use visualization and they use what you hear, what you know, see and hear becomes a reality to you. Just as important as the music industry. So I guess it all kicked off at about the same time, correct?
yeah, yeah. So Hollywood started getting into high gear with the Eon of Horus as well. So when I talk about the Eon of Horus again, folks, again, what I'm talking about is the transformation we're currently going through. We're seeing the destruction of the old, and that's why we're seeing all of this decadence. And they're taking us into a different. This is their plan to take us into a different age, an age where it's all about it's pagan based. Okay. Now I'm not. I don't associate with any particular religion. I'm just telling you that's where it's going. Okay, it's pagan based. Now, it's you can call it Luciferianism. You can call it Thelema, which is Crowley's religion. You could talk about it as the cult of Dionysus, the cult of Pan. Pick one. That's what it's all about. But yeah, so Hollywood, you know, same thing. I mean, they were moving at the same rate and pace as the music industry. Now, I'm also a retired master hypnotherapist,
Wow.
and so I retired back last year after 12 years of private practice. Now, the reason why TV is
Interesting.
extremely impactful, and I've actually done presentations on this, David, is because TV is giving you visuals, and the subconscious mind loves imagery. So when you're watching television and then you've got the actor speaking or you've got some kind of narration going on, that's essentially the the um, the post hypnotic suggestions. That's essentially the hypnotist narrating for you what's going on, what it is you're watching. There's no doubt that anybody who's watching this right now has seen a significant increase in the controller's agenda item. You watch just about anything on Netflix these days.
It's all that.
It's all there. Those elements are all there. And that's to get you to accept it. That's because you're watching it. And then what they do is they package it. Again, like I said before, it's about presentation as something it's good. It's, you know,
A rainbow.
it's nothing. It's not anything to be concerned about. Don't be alarmed. It's just a different lifestyle. And, you know, and I piss a lot of people off when I say what I'm going to say.
Be
They're
careful.
going
'Cause I
against,
want this. It's going so good for YouTube.
I'm just going to say that it's cutting across the grain. It's cutting across the
Yeah,
natural order.
right.
That's all I'll say. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'll leave it there. And let me just tell you something. I'm very compassionate. I have a lot of empathy for every human being. But what we're seeing today, this is an agenda. This is not about helping these groups. These groups are being used. They're being leveraged to push an agenda forward, because at the end of the day, when I mentioned earlier about what they're looking for by the time they get to the year 2100 is their new order with a lot less people. They're not going to care what your orientation is.
Yeah.
They don't
That's how,
care.
and that's how you get to a lot less people too, is by same sex. Same sex. I mean, they can't reproduce unless they adopt, right? So that's how you get it. So if you keep pushing that, it's an end of a lineage. You know,
Well,
it's an
exactly. So
end of a species.
there's a lot of things going on that are contributing to the lack of fertility, inability to procreate. One of it goes back to the event starting in March 2020. Okay.
Yep.
That is a major player. I won't say any more because David wants to keep
This right
this
here,
on.
right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
I can make
So
hand signal. That's what I do.
yeah, and you've got the endocrine disruptors in plastics and all kinds of stuff in the food, the water, the air, and so on. So you
I
know,
mean, it just seems people are gonna watch this and be like, "Man, we're doomed."
well, you know, it's
What
look,
do we do? This is horrible.
we've got to. The thing is, I know it sounds horrible. It does. But if we don't talk about it, if we don't raise the awareness and make people if it doesn't pique their interest, then they're not going to do anything about it. So if you think what I'm saying now is not good, it's just only going to get a lot worse if you don't wake up.
Right.
If
And
you
and I
wake,
say this all the time to people. I'm a living example of this. I was juggling extremes. I was juggling alcoholism, boxing, fighting, women, the whole thing. I mean, I was just crazy, right? And it
yeah,
wasn't until I had my self awareness, that I came upon and said, if I keep doing this, I'm gonna die, and it's done. It's over. I had to first come to the conclusion, like I had to make a change. I had to have the awareness about me to say something is wrong here.
right,
That's the first step in anything, is understanding that something is wrong. Then you can make a change. Then you can go forward and start changing things in your life. So I'm a living example of that. And I'm proud to say that. I mean, I should be gone. I'm on bonus time. I'm telling you that right now. And I think that's what we have to do as a society. And when we
yeah,
start talking about things like this, when I bring you on my program, we talk about things like this. This is the initial first step, correct?
right, right. So what I tell my audience, David, is do not under any circumstances relinquish your authority. You are your own authority. So when you go outside of yourself and you give your authority to that particular politician or that person in government or that person in the NIH or these different agencies, okay, that's all I'm going to say. Like I said, to keep this YouTube
Right.
friendly. Once you do that, you have given up your authority. You have disempowered yourself because you're no longer critically thinking. You're no longer leading your own life. You've taken your hands off your steering wheel. Don't do that. Keep your hands on the steering wheel and critically think. Think for yourself. Okay? The television was put in place, folks, to brainwash you. That's what the TV box, the TV is a hypnosis box. That's what it is. Make no mistake
Television,
about it.
television, program.
Program. That's right. And when they have news anchors in hypnosis, we use anchoring techniques in order to embed whatever suggestions or whatever work we're doing with the client who comes in for a hypnosis session. When I was doing it, I was doing it for all good stuff to get people to stop smoking, stop vaping, for public speaking, self-confidence, and all of that. That's what I was doing it for. But those same techniques can be used for nefarious reasons. What I tell people in my audience, David, is it's all about intent. This is bad, that's bad, this symbol's bad, that symbol's bad. No, 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 no. It's not the symbols. It's the intent. It's the intention.
Intention behind it.
Right.
Just like that scientist, the Japanese scientist with water, right? I forgot
Yes.
his name. That it's all about intention that changes the molecular structure of water.
Yes.
Correct. I mean,
That's right.
we are water beings. We're vibrational beings made of water, and it is intent. And if you
Right.
put love on a bottle and have that intent on the bottle, it changes the molecular structure of the water. If you put hatred or whatever on the bottle and put that intent on the bottle, it corrodes.
That's right.
We are the same.
That's right. And that's what they try to do. See, the controllers constantly bombard you with fear. That's why you got to shut the television off, shut the TV off.
I don't watch it.
By being in fear all the time, what's happening is exactly what David is saying. Your internal being becomes corrupted. And then your mind is in a very bad place. You're worrying all the time. You're stressing. You're fearful. You were not born into this life to live a life like that. That's being imposed upon you. It's a battle of will. It's their will versus your will.
But Mike, I mean, to fight this fight against this power it be, we have to. I'm in high adrenaline all day long, doing these programs, putting the word out there, getting the truth out there. I even when I was boxing, I was terrified every day. I mean, I was going into the ring, fighting the best guys in the gym, sparring with the top 10 heavyweights of the world, and all the time I was always in a state of fear. And I am now with these programs that I'm putting out. I'm like, and I have this adrenaline going. So it is a kind of like a state of fear, but I feel like I have to be in that state to continue this fight. I can't ignore it. I can't sit back and do nothing. So what do you have to say about that? Like, I have to be immersed in this to fight this fight and get the word out there. But so what do you say about that? I mean, what do I do? Just not do it and just listen to happy music all the time?
No, no, yeah, no,
What
no.
do I do?
What I'm saying is that you have to push through the fear. There's always going to be a bit of fear. What I would love for people to do is see, look, when I speak or when David speaks, a lot of people look at it and they take it as entertainment. I call it conspiratainment. They listen to it, and then as soon as the show is off, they're out doing stuff that, that contributes
Right.
to the enablement of the agenda, right? Now, let's just face it, folks, right? Be honest with yourself. This is what goes on. So what we really need to do is more voices, more websites, more blogs, more podcasts, more research. People need to speak up. People need to step out of the shadows. Stop being afraid. And it is uncomfortable to put yourself out there. It is, because as soon as you do, especially when you reach a certain level of notoriety, in other words, a certain level of reach, the clowns come out, the trolls come out, right? And a lot of that is controlled. They're coming at you for because you become a target, and they try to disrupt whatever it is you're trying to do or the message you're trying to get out. But the thing is, like I said, when you stand in your own authority, are there moments when you're going to be fearful? Yeah. But you know what? You got to push through the fear, and you have to say, what kind of life do I want to live? Do I want to live in their system? A system of 15-minute cities, eating bugs? I'll own nothing and I'll be happy? That's not what I want. It's not what I want for my children. It's not what I want for
It's the end of
my
humanity.
grandson.
It's the total enslavement and bondage of humanity.
Right.
If we don't fight this war now, it is the end of us. This is it forever, folks. This is not, a few years, it's going to be bad. No, this is it. They own us. They got us, right?
Right. Well, and the thing was, I believe, David, that voices like yours and others that are doing this work were key in throwing a, okay?
Right.
I believe they wanted that to go a lot quicker. They wanted a slam dunk. That's what they wanted. And move on to the next agenda item. And it didn't happen. And a lot of information came out, and it jammed them up. And it sent them
behind
back.
schedule, from what I understand.
They are, and it sent them back to the drawing board. Now, here's the thing: they're not just going to go lie down and go away. They're going to go back to the drawing board, and they're going to come back with a revamped plan. And we was talking about before with the AI constantly being fed, right? So, and it's up to us to continue. We don't give up either. We just keep fighting them until we're able to turn the corner. Somebody wants to ask me, why is it that evil dominates?
Because good people do nothing.
It's because, yeah, right. Good people. And the thing is, evil knows no boundaries, whereas good does. There is a certain boundary where you and I would say, we're not going to do that. Evil doesn't think that way. Evil's like, I don't have boundaries.
I mean, every time I got in the ring and I had to justify ripping someone's head off, I was just like, this is for the greater good. It's greater good. Yeah. I don't know. You got to think like a wolf. I don't know. I mean, so I do. I mean,
your record was quite impressive, by the way. I took a look at how many.
Yeah. I was 36-0 at my peak. I was 36-0, 34 knockouts, 25 in the first round.
And that's a record, right? How many? The 25 in the first round?
Yeah.
Nobody's ever done
Nobody's
that.
beat that. Nobody's beat that. I don't know how I did that. I was just relentless. I don't know. I just had great power and speed in both hands.
I followed boxing going way back with Ali, Frazier, Kenny Norton, George Foreman.
Oh, I love all of them.
Mike Quarry. Remember Mike Quarry?
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, So, I knew of you. Then I took a closer look, and quite impressive.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I miss it. I mean, I look at my belts every day, and I think to myself, where did that guy go?
Oh, you know what? That's a phase of your life, David. You did it. Yeah. You were successful, and then life changes. Different opportunities present themselves, and here you are today, doing.
I think about working out and getting in the gym, and I just tired of thinking about it. I just get exhausted even thinking about it. I'm like, man, I can't do that anymore. Yeah, my back hurts, my knees hurt, my legs hurt, my feet hurt, my hands hurt. It's like, it's just time to move on. It's a brief moment in time, but man, I felt like Superman. It was awesome.
Yeah. But like I said, a different phase of your life now, and the same thing with me. I had different phases of my life, and here I am today, so
This is the most important.
this is very important. This is stepping out of the matrix. This is stepping out of the virtual reality that they fed everybody and trying to get us back,
This
get us
is all of
grounded.
that. Everything you went through led to this. Everything
Yeah,
I went through led to this. And
that's
here we
right.
are doing, and here we are broadcasting it to the world.
I was in the corporate world for 32 years, David, and people say, well, Mike, did you think that you wasted your time there? No, I didn't waste my time there. It was foundational to what I'm doing today. If I didn't work in the corporate world for 32 years, then I would have no idea about what the corporate world was really about and how it plays into everything that's going on today.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So it's almost like you were a student of it to know so for everything that you're telling me and my audience today, it's a culmination of all that. It was a process of learning.
Right.
And even though I felt like an abused stepchild in boxing, like with the I mean, in the thick of it with terrible managers, promoters, it's horrible, but it gave me an education that no other person can have. It's an amazing education, and now I'm trying to take my wits and everything that I've learned through my career and help people with shows like this.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing that you're doing, and you have a lot of subscribers, right? 250 something thousand subscribers.
266 right now. It's
260.
moving up, but I mean, it's because I'm staying very careful. I could have more if I was just to go balls out on YouTube, but I have to play it safe, and But I think the main thing is I keep the town hall and the town square, and I am able to funnel people to different directions, to get more information, and that's what I'm trying to do. So
Well, I do the same
I'm
thing.
playing their game, but I'm beating them at their game.
Well, yeah, to a degree, you play their game because they are still the largest video platform available. This is where people go, right? I've been trying to get people to go to my other platforms for years.
They just don't go.
They just don't go. They sit here in front of YouTube. So what I ended up doing was I would take certain shows and I would edit them and make them YouTube friendly. I would call it the YouTube edition.
Yes.
And then I would say, hey, if you want the full show, go over here. See the link in the description.
And that's what I'm going to do. This is going to get edited. They're going to have to, but it'll be on ninoscorner.tv and later on Rumble. But the edited version will be on YouTube. I'm surprised you have a channel on YouTube.
Yeah, I do. But I had a lot of, there was a lot of videos that were taken down. I mean, they were taking videos down. Like last month, they took a video down that was up for 7 or 8 years.
Jeez.
Yeah. What were you?
What was that video?
Oh, I don't even remember. I was talking about, I think it mentioned, I can't even say it. It mentioned what happened in 2001 in Manhattan.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I still kind of talk about that openly. So
that was 20 something years ago. Yeah. And YouTube yanked it and said that, it violated their community guidelines.
Wow.
It's hate speech. That's what they call it. Hate speech.
Yeah. Well, let me get this up on YouTube, and I'm going to put this on ninoscorner.tv and Rumble as well. So all 3 platforms.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Is the full version going to be on Rumble? Is that what you're going to do?
I'm going to put the edited version first on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then I'll put the full version on ninoscorner.tv and Rumble. Later Rumble. Rumble's like a couple weeks down the line.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Yeah.
I appreciate you, Mike. Let's get on for some more of these.
Absolutely, David. Yeah, we could talk about a lot more. I really appreciate. Yeah, Beth, thank you for connecting us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. I've heard this conspiracy before. I've heard it about it's not really Paul McCartney. And I ask, why would that be? I don't understand the agenda behind it, but you're going to explain all that to me. I mean, because this can lead to so many other things like Michael Jackson, Prince, Elvis. I mean, it opens the door for everything.
It does. It does. The Beatles are foundational. When we talk about the pop culture, pop rock music, David, they are the foundation. There were others before them, but as we just talked about before we got started, Tavistock is designed the Beatles to have a long-term strategy, right? They are, I call them the Pied Pipers of the Eon of Horus. And the Eon of Horus goes back to Aleister Crowley. And if we have time, I can get into that to some degree.
Aleister Crowley.
Yes. So
he's been behind all these movements, correct? The social engineering of this.
Yeah, Crowley is very important because of his eons, and he's held in very high esteem by those inside the pyramid of power. So you can call them whatever you want, the controllers, the Illuminati, and so on. So his religion of Thelema, which is Greek for will, is the predominant spiritual and religious philosophy of those within the pyramid. And that's why we hear, do as thou wilt. Nike's tagline, just do it. It's the same thing. If we go back in time, there was an old tagline going back into I guess it was the 60s and 70s. If it feels good, do it. These are all derivatives of do as thou wilt. And Crowley explained that there were 3 eons that he discussed: the eon of Isis, the eon of Osiris. The eon of Osiris overlaps with the age of Pisces. So Crowley argues that the age of Pisces had to do with humanity being shackled and not being able to pursue their true and pure will. So it was a time when humans were not free. He claimed that the eon of Horus, which is the next eon, which he would equate with the age of Aquarius, which I shouldn't say he, but it overlaps with the age of Aquarius, is a time when all of that shackling goes away. People become unshackled. They're able to pursue their true will. Nobody is going to get in your way or my way or anybody's way of pursuing what our desires are. Our will dictates where we'd like to go. So the eon of Horus is the eon that Crowley said began in the early 1900s, and which I have put a stake in the ground and said that it really went pedal to the metal starting in 1960. I use 1960 as that starting point where it really
went full speed.
Okay, and that's when we have when you think about it, that's the whole counterculture movement.
Jim Morrison, the Doors,
right? The whole Laurel Canyon scene, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones.
But the Beatles were the big ones, right? That was the first manufactured band.
Yes.
Really? So what was the Doors manufactured? They were all manufactured. They
were all manufactured, and I'll talk a little bit about that, because when I say they're all manufactured, people ask, well, are you saying that they didn't play their own instruments or they didn't write some of their music? And that's not what I'm saying. And with the Beatles, especially between 1962 and 66. Based upon my research,
Well, let me ask you. Let me just cut in real quick for a second.
Yeah.
Let me, because I'm kind of misunderstanding something here. Did the Beatles form their own band and then start making it, and then got intercepted, or like the Doors, or like were they manufactured from the very beginning to be a group to be used for the CIA from the very get-go, or were they actually a bunch of guys that like wanted to start a band and they started making music and then they got taken and used for the occult or the CIA for nefarious reasons?
Right. So if I look at the Beatles, I would argue that the Beatles, especially John Lennon and Paul McCartney, I believe it's very possible that they were in a mind control program early on in life. Maybe they're, 12, 13, 14 years old, and they were being handled and groomed at that point in time. Both Lennon and Paul McCartney, their mothers died very early in their lives. In John Lennon's case, his father just disappeared. And I believe that in Paul McCartney's place, biological Paul McCartney's place, his father had a lot to do with the handling and the grooming that was taking place, that would subsequently position them to be in that pool of resource that Tavistock is constantly scoping out. Now, a lot of folks don't want to hear that because they just want to believe the official Beatles narrative. I call it the Cinderella story, where it was all organic and these 4 guys came out of Liverpool, connected with Brian Epstein, a record store owner who subsequently got them signed to EMI under the tutelage of a George Martin and then went on to unprecedented fame and fortune. Okay. The problem with that story is that that's not how the world works. That's not how the music and entertainment industry works. You don't reach that level of success and notoriety and fame unless you have a machine behind you.
100%.
Right? That's just the way it works. Nothing to that magnitude flies under the controller's radar. Nothing. And for folks that want to believe that that statement's not true, I'm telling you, you have to do more research, because that's just simply how it works. So the Beatles, they were doing their little gigs. They weren't a very good band going back, let's just say 1959 going into 1960. In 1960, they had a manager. His name was Alan Williams. Alan Williams, I have deducted, was really their first handler. Before that, Pete Best, who was their drummer, he was organizing their gigs. And then Alan Williams came into the picture. Alan Williams brought the Beatles to Hamburg, Germany in August of 1960. When they got there, it's well documented, they were marginal musicians at best. They weren't very good as far as, you know, the skill level on their instruments, and they weren't songwriters. From August 1960 to December of 1960, you know, they just banged around in Germany. They were playing, you know, 7 hours a night, drinking, doing what young guys do when, right, they were in that environment. They cut loose. And then they went home in December of 1960. It was just a complete, it was just a flop. Nothing panned out for them. And in this book here, The Lennon Prophecy by Joseph Niezgoda, he explains that both John Lennon and Paul McCartney went back home in December of 1960 feeling defeated, not feeling really good about what happened in Germany, because basically nothing happened in Germany. And then if you fast forward, so from August of 1960 to when the Beatles arrive in America on February 7th of 1964, that's only 3.5 years, David.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the timeline and then what was going on under the hood during that time period. So we have this band who are not very good musicians. They're not songwriters in August of 1960. And then there's this trajectory that takes them to February 7th, 1964, where they land in America with a tour that was referred to as the Beatles Conquering America. So this was really the beginning of the British invasion. So that whole 3.5 year period of time, that stretch of time, there was a lot going on there. And what was going on is the Beatles were being shaped, groomed, and handled to play the role that they ended up playing on behalf of the controllers.
And they really upset and dethroned Elvis.
Yeah, so they surpassed Elvis. So Elvis, think of Elvis, Bill Haley and the Comets, those types of bands, groups, and artists as table setting. So what Tavistock does, so Tavistock rolls it under the Committee of 300. And for those who are interested in learning about the Committee of 300 and Tavistock, this book here, I think I might have showed it on the last interview, by Dr. Coleman, The Committee of 300, A Conspirator's Hierarchy. A very, very important book that I think the first edition was released back in the early 1990s. So 30 years ago, very prophetic, but you get to understand a lot. And in that book, Coleman introduces the fact that Tavistock created the Beatles as a massive social engineering initiative. The other book that you should read, folks, take a look at, that I highly recommend, is Daniel Estulin's book on the Tavistock Institute, Social Engineering the Masses. The Committee of 300 and Tavistock are behind the Beatles' psychological operation. It was a social engineering initiative.
And every band since, right? Every band since, I mean, that are mainstream, correct? That really made it big on the scene. They're all been controlled.
Yeah, they are all in the controlling matrix, David. So the way we should look at this is there are degrees of control. Now, some bands are put out there like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, because the Rolling Stones are in the same category as the Beatles, were put out there as social engineering initiatives coming out of Tavistock in order to begin the whole social engineering agenda. Now, that social engineering agenda was all about breaking down traditional values, breaking down existing institutionalized religions. And the primary focus was on breaking down Christianity. This is why we have
chipping away at it, chipping away at it.
chipping away at it. And the way they did that was through the music, through entertainment. Now, I'm not just talking
And then
about
women's liberation, breaking the family
Yes.
unit. They all
Yes.
did it simultaneously. It all
Yes.
came in at once.
Right. So you cannot look at anything as just a single thread. They have multiple threads. It's very dynamic, running at the same time. So in other words, if the music is not your thing, and we can't get you to shift around your thoughts and your ethics and whatever through music, then we'll get you here and we'll get you there. Maybe it's through the movies.
Wow.
Maybe you have it through the women's movement. You know,
They did it all at the same. The timing was everything. They bring in the music, they bring in the movements, they bring in the movies, all just coming in at the same time like a tidal wave.
Yes. So think of it. They always start at a very basic level because they have deemed this is a level we need to start at because this is what will be accepted by most of the population. So they introduce things small at first.
Look where we're at right now, though. Look how far we've come to this whole LGBT thing movement, demonic presences on TV. The music is just, I'm sorry, but it's just gone completely demonic. It's just the frequency of it is just like this low vibrational tone, and the music itself is demonic. Everything's demonic now. Commercials. It's almost like fentanyl coming through the border, killing everybody. It's all finally hit this culmination, this climax point now where we're self-destructing. That's what they've kind of led us to this point in time where we're at right now, right?
Right. That's it. So think of it as like going upstairs. The first step is Bill Haley and the Comets. Second step might be Elvis. Then the third step, you get to the Beatles. And then you get to the British invasion. And then as you move along, now it's punk. Then it's glam. Then it's heavy metal. Then it's hard rock. It's techno. It's rap. It's hip hop. All of that stuff. So we've gotten to the point now, you and I talked before we got started here about sound. Now, sound is very important. I was listening to an interview by Alan Watt. Alan's not around anymore. He was did a lot of social commentary, and he was also in the music business for a long time. And in one of his interviews, he had mentioned that George Martin, who was the Beatles producer, was an expert in sound engineering. And we're not talking about the sound engineer to pull together the music. I mean, that's part of it as well, but more in terms of how sound affects people, how you reach them psychologically through sound. And I found that to be very interesting. But if you listen to, example, rap, with its very, very heavy bass beat, and then you have the cadence of the lyrics, it's a form of hypnosis. So with that constant beat, boom, 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 and then you start rapping lyrics, you've got a hypnosis process going.
Right.
And the frequency and the sound is disruptive. And so it's going to make people agitated. It might make them feel out of sorts. They have this whole process of how to affect the human psychology, David. They have it down to an art. They've been at it for a very, very long time. In fact, they're so advanced with it that most people can't even fathom where it's at right now. But before, you wanted to know a little bit more about Tavistock. So Tavistock is the World Center for Mass Mind Manipulation and Social Engineering Activities.
Wow.
It's a sophisticated organization used to shape the destiny of the world by changing the paradigm of modern society. These are charts I put together that I presented over time. It has its control mechanisms in academia, multimedia, intelligence, medicine, especially the pharmaceutical industry. It has a range of disciplines which include anthropology, economics, organizational behavior, look at that as the international corporate structure, political science, psychoanalysis, psychology, and sociology. So its roots are everywhere. And again, folks, if you're interested, Daniel's book lays it out. It was written, I think, back in 2008, but you'll learn a lot from this book, a lot. And so everything that it goes on in the entertainment industry, which includes music, it's all planned out. There's a strategy behind all of it. I think last time we spoke, I mentioned if you go to Netflix or Amazon Prime and you start watching a movie, all of the agenda items that we are confronted with today, you mentioned a few of them before. I'm going to try to keep this as clean as possible.
Climate. I see a lot of it's climate.
Yeah, climate and other agendas, right?
Right.
They are embedded into the themes and the scripts of these.
You think you're going to watch a documentary on Netflix? It's all propaganda, man.
Yeah, they're pushing all kinds of stuff. So you have to ask yourself, how is that? How is it? I still come across people that think that there is no world order, that there is no internationalist structure. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
If we just go back to the event of March of 2020, that is pretty much, it's still playing out to some degree now.
Yeah.
If you go back to that, you have to ask yourself, folks, how is it that everybody received the exact same script? How is it that everybody, when I talk about everybody, I'm talking about each country, declared the same states of emergency, the same process applied to everybody worldwide? How can that be? If you don't think that there's an international structure in place. And just take a look at all the international structure. We have the International Monetary Fund, we have the World Bank, we have the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the United Nations. They're there for a reason, and they've been there a long time. And the reason why they're there is to implement their strategy to usurp national sovereignty and bring about a one world order, or a new world order, with a one world religion, by the way. So that's what we're confronted with right now.
When I was talking to Rick Ross, the real Rick Ross, and at the fights, he gave me his book. He signed and gave me his book. He's talking about how they inundated the black neighborhoods with crack cocaine.
Yes.
At the same time as the hip hop music was coming through, the hip hop music controllers were also the owners of the private prison systems that the drugs were leading to. So all of it led as like a stream into the prison systems that they controlled. It's pretty fascinating, that how this all took place. And then I have other theories on this as well, but this is all an agenda. This is all to destroy and corrupt society so they can break us down and then rebuild us in their image, correct?
Right. It's order from chaos. We've all heard that, right? So I want to you mentioned hip hop. So this article comes from AARP, which is loaded up with propaganda for seniors, loaded up.
Yeah.
So this article, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to show folks, I want to read it to you so that you can understand how this is completely set up. So it's 50 years of hip hop. So that's what they're celebrating. What emerged from a simple party in 1973 has evolved into a global cultural movement. Everything is global. Now, I'm going to read this, and then hopefully most folks will be able to pick out the problem with what I'm going to read here. It all started on August 11th, 1973. An 18-year-old Clive Campbell and his younger sister Cindy hosted a dance party billed as a back-to-school jam in the rec room of an apartment complex at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx, New York. The details are now the stuff of legend. Okay, that's all I'm going to read. Now, you have to ask yourself, how does anybody know that hip-hop began on August 11th, 1973 at a party that a person by the name of Clive Campbell and his sister Cindy throw.
Yeah. It'd be impossible to know.
It's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
it's a ridiculous narrative. So what is it? It's made up. Now, I'm not saying that Clive Campbell and his sister Cindy didn't exist, but it was pulled together to fabricate this official narrative,
Yeah.
to put together this story. So to be able to pinpoint something like that, you have to understand that is a narrative that's put out by the controllers, because there's just simply no way. And again, so they're saying back in 1973, this little party, this little shindig was thrown, and then 50 years later, it's a worldwide, global cultural movement. That's how it works. So people will read articles like this, and they will read it, and they will believe it. They will take it verbatim. They will embrace it. And you know what that is, folks? This is conditioning. This is propaganda. This is fiction that is sold to you. And this goes on all the time. I'm just using this particular article as an example.
And you know, for my audience too, to understand this, even what's so important about music is its vibration, correct, Mike? It's vibration. And that Japanese scientist, I forget his name, that showed that water responds to intent and vibration, that it changes the molecular structure, either good or positive or negatively, is the same with music and intent. So what we're listening to, we are water. We were made, what, 75, 90% water? I'm not sure the exact number, but we change with vibrational intent. So whatever they're pushing through the airwaves is changing our molecular structure, correct?
Yes, it absolutely is. And that's the other thing. They want people to believe you're just a sack of, skin and bones. But we are electrical beings, and we respond, positive or negative, to frequency and vibration. Like David just said, I forgot that doctor's name too, for the life of me. But
Miko something. I could be wrong, but
he did these tests with the water, and he showed how when you put a label on the water that said love, how the water reacted to that, and in a very positive and beautiful way. And then if you took a label and you put hate on it, how it got all distorted and it looked very dysfunctional. But music is the same way. Now, you're going to hear debates in the alternative media and just across the internet about the frequency of music. So going back, I think it was the 1950s, when I say they, I forgot which association it was, but they determined that tuning the note A to 440 hertz was going to be the industry standard now. So A equals 440. So in fact, for those of you who are musicians and for those of you who are not, this is a tuner, guitar tuner that goes on your headstock. So this tuner tunes to 440 hertz across all 6 of your guitar strings or all 4 of your bass strings. So that's the standard today. However, there are those who've done research that will say that 440 is a disruptive frequency. It's not a frequency that is in harmony with the human frequency. And that number is 432 hertz, which means 432 is just slightly more flat, tuning down. So to go from 440 to 432, you just tune down a bit. What they did was, if 432 is the frequency that resonates with humans organically and naturally, what they did was they sharpened it. They tuned it up to 440 to make it ever so slightly different, but still disruptive. So when you think about these types of maneuvers,
when did they start doing that again?
I believe it was the 1950s.
Wow.
I have to go back and take a look. It was a while ago that I took a look at it. There was an association, I forgot the name of it. And they got together and they said, well, yeah, we're going to establish that 440 hertz is the standard for tuning. So I mean, I'll play in 440 because everything is tuned to 440. But sometimes what I'll do is I have software that will convert 440 back to 432.
Got you.
You see? And what I've noticed when you go from 440 to 432, is the music has a warmer feel to it. And that's
Interesting.
just me. Now, some people will say they can't tell the difference, but there are many people that say that if they listen to the comparison between a 440 hertz song and a 432, that they can clearly tell which is which.
You know, that leads me to believe, is it Noah Harari? Is it of the
Yeah,
World
Yuval
Economic?
Harari.
Yuval Harari, sorry, Yuval Harari. He says human beings are completely hackable
Yes.
and that we should have no free will, that we're completely hackable beings. And if you really think about it, just with music alone, obviously they're hacking us. That's how they're hacking human beings, is by music and what we see on television and the agendas they push through the movements, the music and the propaganda they show on television. They're able to create these groups like BLM, LGBTQ, and push these agendas through as we are in that what is it, a hypnotic trance?
Yeah.
What are we under that we accept all these agendas?
What happens is, well, I'm a retired certified master hypnotherapist, and I was in
There you
private
go.
practice for
All right.
12 years.
So I'm on the
So,
money.
so I know a little bit about this, and I've
Wow.
actually have done presentations on this topic. So we'll use the TV as an example because that's their biggest tool. It's a hypnosis box. So when you watch television, what happens is there are four basic trance states. You have beta, which is your waking state. Below that is alpha. That's the first level of trance. Below that is theta. And then below that is delta. Delta is sleep. So if you were wondering why one of the variants was called delta, right? What they were doing is they were poking at people. In other words, you have to be asleep to believe this.
Wow.
So when a variant was called delta, that's what they were saying. Now, so what happens is when you're watching television, you drop into an alpha state. You drop into a light trance state. And what's taking place on the television, let's just say you're watching cable news. If you've ever noticed, what they do is they will play a loop, a video loop over and over and over again of some event or some tragedy or however they classify it. Now, the reason why they're playing loops over and over again is because the subconscious / unconscious mind loves imagery, loves it. So as you go into that light trance state and you're focused on that television and they're playing that loop, you're taking it in and they're playing it over and over and over again. And then what they'll do is they'll flash up hypnotic suggestions in the form of, there's two ways they do it. One, they will put printed words up on the television. It will say tragedy, shooting, war. These are words which they're concerning, right? You're okay, what's going on here? And then they're showing you the loop at the same time. So this is all happened simultaneously. And then you have the reporter or the quote anchor. Now in hypnosis, when we want to embed positive suggestion, in other words, you want to get somebody to stop smoking, to release weight, to be better at public speaking, you anchor suggestions. And that's why they're called anchors, because they're anchoring what's taking place on the television set. So now you've got the visuals, you're in the trance state.
I mean, it's all there in plain sight. Everything
it's
you're
all
saying.
there. It's all there. And the other thing that they do is they like to use the colors blue and red. Now, blue and red are, the way the mind interprets blue is calm, relaxed, generosity, voice of reason. Red, on the other hand, the mind automatically, it's just embedded in us to look at the color red and think about fear, concern, beware, be on guard, be watchful, be prudent. So this is why when they put their news out there, a lot of times you're going to see these blue and red sets. And depending upon how they want to affect your mind, they will focus more on the red than the blue. A lot of times you'll have two talking heads will show up on some cable news show. And you might have one guy who has a red tie on and the other guy has a blue tie. Now, the guy with the blue tie, sometimes they'll even have a bluish background. This is the person that is supposed to be the voice of reason. This is the person that's giving you, I know, just relax. We've got this under control. Nothing to worry about here. We've got it. Move over to the other person who's got the red tie and maybe some more red in the background. This is a
Urgency.
person that's telling you, hey, you need to be aware, be alert, be careful. There's danger out there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay. Now, also the blue and red, to make matters even a little more complicated, to give people something to think about, is they represent the two lodges of Freemasonry. You have the Blue Lodge and the Red Lodge.
Wow. I didn't even
Okay.
know that. Okay.
Yeah, blue and red. Now, if you look at a Fox News set, the typical Fox News set, there's a lot of blue and red, a lot. And they all do it, but Fox is like over the top with it from what I've seen. And Fox will even put a little orange in there for you. And it's like, why is orange in there? Because the color orange, when you spell it out in Pythagorean numerology, because they love their numbers, because as I mentioned in the last show, it's all occulted. Occultists run the show, folks. It's not your presidents, it's not your prime ministers. Occultists run the show. And when you put when you spell out orange in Pythagorean numerology, put it into a numerology calculator, it totals to 33. So it's 33 degrees of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Okay, so they're always leaving their calling cards. So it's not just a calling card, the blue and red, but there is also a significant psychological impact that the mind automatically takes in. And this is how they do it. If we go back to the event that took place in September of 2001 in New York, going back to the looped video, I know people, I wondered it myself back in the day, well, why is it we keep seeing that same video over and over and over and over again? That's the reason why. Because
is it because when they tell a lie long enough and loud enough, it becomes the truth to them, and that's how it works in the mind?
Yeah, so that's a big piece of it. It's conditioning. So when it kept showing that loop from September of 2001, that was embedding what went on there with the words they were putting up on the screen, with the narrative that the anchor or the quote news person was speaking about. Think of the person who's speaking during a newscast, whether it be on the ABC, NBC, CBS, or the cable networks, as the hypnotist. He's giving you a narrative. He's giving you suggestions. They then become post-hypnotic suggestions. Post-hypnotic means once you leave the hypnosis session, that's where your mind is going to be. That's what your mind is going to focus on. And it's very, very, complex. That particular event was a trauma-based event, trauma-based mind control event, as is so many other events that took place. March 2020, the same thing. It's the same thing. The same process.
And that's why they call it a television program.
Yeah, because it's programming you. It's programming you. It's programming you to be docile. It's programming you to believe things that aren't true.
Because if you think about it, most people, when they're sitting in front of a television, including myself, sometimes I fall asleep. It puts me to sleep. So I know that's hypnosis.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. The television had one single objective from day one. They knew at some point it was going to be able to be their biggest tool in their toolbox to condition people. They knew it from day one. And like I said, they start simple. And then they just, like the staircase I mentioned before, they just keep building upon it. And it gets more and more sophisticated, more complicated as far as people's ability to sift through information. That's the other thing they do. It's information overload. And this is what they do all the time. In hypnosis, so if you have a client that is not able to go into hypnosis easily, let's say a lot of times this will happen when somebody is in a career where, like an accountant or somebody who does coding, they're very, very analytical.
Yeah.
So what we do is a technique called the confusion technique. So the confusion technique, what that does is that dishes out to the subconscious mind issues or situations or circumstances that are very difficult to reconcile. In fact, sometimes it's not even, there is no reconciliation. There is no answer. But the conscious mind will try to figure out what the answer is. And even though there is no answer, it can be this, this, or that, but the conscious mind is trying to make sense out of it. What happens is the conscious mind gets to a point where it cannot make sense out of it. And what does it do? It backs out. It backs out of that process of trying to figure it out, and it slips below and allows the subconscious mind to emerge. And that's another technique that they have, the confusion technique.
Doesn't
where
the
for those
subconscious basically doesn't know how to disseminate? It takes everything as truth, right? Am I correct in saying that?
the subconscious,
Right. It'll whatever suggestions you give it, it will take as truth, correct?
not always. The subconscious mind can reject suggestions. So some hypnotists will say that the subconscious or the unconscious mind goes both ways. I call it the inner mind. It will take things literally, but the thing is, the subconscious / unconscious mind or the inner mind can reject suggestion. I know this because, like I said, I was in practice for 12 years, and I was very good at what I did. So the way the mind works, David, think of it as a hard drive on a computer. This is the analogy, and this is how it works. So as you go through life, what happens is there are certain events that take place. And when those events take place, especially when you're younger, those events write files to your hard drive. So if you were scared or traumatized as a kid, those files get written. All right. And the more you use those files, the more prominent they become, the larger they become, and it starts to dictate your behavior. I used to have clients come in and say to me, adults, 40s, 50s, 60s, and say, Mike, I have no idea why I react a certain way to a particular situation. I have no idea. As an example, public speaking. I know my material. I'm really good at it. I'm an expert in my field. But when I get in front of people, I just lock up, and I lose my confidence and all that. Well, if you put that person into hypnosis and you regress them back in time, they'll go back to when they were a kid. And when they were a child, I'll use this as an example. Perhaps they were in school and they went up to present and something didn't go well. Maybe they got ridiculed. Something happened which damaged their confidence. That file got
carried with them the rest of their life.
Yes. So that file got written to that person's hard drive, the hard drive of the mind. Now, as they go forward in life, if they continue to reinforce that fear, that concern, that file just gets bigger and bigger. And now, whenever you're in a situation that's similar to what happened in school back when you were, in maybe 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, that's going to be your behavior. That's going to be your reaction. It's going to be, I don't know if I can do this. I don't have the confidence. My self-esteem is low. I don't get this. Now, the thing is, hypnosis, when you use it for good, which is what myself and many of my colleagues, I was board certified by the International Association of Counselors and Therapists. You can reframe and you can change up and update that file. Because once the mind goes back in time and realizes, oh, okay, so that's where that came from. Oh. And then you go through what I used to refer to as exercises to bring about the positive change. In other words, to tell the mind, hey, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to be here. We want to be confident. We want to be a really good public speaker, all of that stuff.
Remove and delete, right?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Delete the old files, bring in the new. And then what happens is, then when you go back on stage and you're going to publicly speak and you do a good job and you realize that you might have been a little nervous, but not like it used to be, now your confidence builds.
Let me ask you,
better and better at it.
Do you see people now with like social media and like alternative media? Is that something that they can't really control fully? the powers that be, cannot really control let's say the globalists, that they cannot really control social media the way they want to, like they did with television, because there's a lot of alternative media platforms like my channel. We're having this discussion. This
Right.
is stuff they don't want leaked out there. They don't want this out there. So the fact that they cannot control these conversations, that's got to be waking a lot of people up.
Yes. So it's a very interesting dichotomy. They've got themselves in a little bit of a bind. They created social media, and they created social media as a big, we spoke about this, I think, in the last show. It's a gigantic data collection vehicle for them to take into their big Borg, their artificial intelligence. And they do have AI. I've even seen people say, oh, AI doesn't exist. No, AI does exist. It's alive and well. Okay. And is it perfected? No, but it's progressing leaps and bounds with each passing day, week, month, and year. So they're scraping all kinds of data. Now, and the reason why social media was put out there was because it was to create this narcissistic, for the most part,
I talk
society.
about this on my show all the time.
Yes, everything's about me.
Yes.
Everybody wants to be a celebrity. Everybody,
and let me guess, they did this at first with reality TV
yes,
shows.
Yep, reality TV shows were the start, and then out into social media.
You're saying this was designed, this was engineered, this wasn't just the natural flow of things?
No,
it was actually, they planned this. They said first comes the reality TV, then comes Instagram, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, where everyone's famous now. How many likes do I get? How many followers do I have? Right. I mean, I can't believe what I'm seeing when I'm on Instagram, because I come from pre-internet now into this post-internet, or this internet era now, where everything I see now is people trying so hard. They can't pull themselves out of the phone to look at the world around them, not even for a second.
Right. Because there is no world around them. They are their world. Everything comes back to them. It's this very inward looking, selfish, narcissistic mentality, even though they may not even be aware of it. Now, the CIA, had the front money to put Facebook up on the map.
Yeah, it was DARPA funded, correct?
And yes, it goes back. Well, I know it goes back to the CIA. Now, could DARPA be involved in it? Most likely. All of these organizations are all intertwined. They're all interlaced. So I was asked a question one time on another show, and they said, "Well, we have the CIA, and you have MI6, and you have the Mossad." And everybody would kind of thinking these were separate entities. I said, "Well, they're separate entities from the perspective of, we'll say the CIA is the United States, MI6 is the UK, and the Mossad is Israel. But when you move above that definition, they're all tied out. They're all working together. They're all working together. Now, one of the other social media platforms that I was just chuckling was the TikTok, right? And he was saying, "Oh, well, TikTok, this came from China, and China this and China that, and so on." And it's ridiculous. It's a silly discussion, because this government knew very well where TikTok came from, right? They knew where it originated from, and it was allowed to come in, and it was allowed to flourish. And then, periodically it'll be used as a punching bag whenever they need a boogeyman or they need some kind of distraction. But that's why we talk about the world order, this internationalist governance that is in place. All of this stuff, folks, you're fed stories all day long. And these stories are designed to keep you disengaged. It's to keep you from, running around.
To know the true reality of the world, because that's how they hold their power. They hold the knowledge.
Yeah.
They want things. They keep us under this hypnosis, correct?
Yes. They want you to chase your tail. And there are agendas out there, and there are psychological operations out there that are designed to keep people sitting in their seats. Don't be vocal. No reason to be kinetic.
Would you say that?
Would activate.
would you say that not only the music industry, not only movies, not only MSM, but NASA,
Oh
NASA?
yeah.
Would you say Sigmund Freud worked for them? Would you say Darwin? Would you say all of it's under the same thing? I mean, it's just a big psyop.
It's
All
all a lie, David. It's all a lie. Let me talk about NASA. NASA's role, first and foremost, is black ops. It's not about a space program, right? That's the fodder that they give to the gullible masses about rocket launches, and they supposedly sent a another probe or whatever around the moon again. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, folks, but I haven't heard a thing
oh,
about that since they made it a big story going back about 2 months ago. Jack Parsons with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory was a disciple of Aleister Crowley. L. Ron Hubbard, the
Scientology, correct?
Scientology, and let me tell you, Scientology is unbelievable. It's really amazing. There's a great show on, I think it's either Netflix or Amazon.
Oh, can we even trust it?
Well, what happened was I forgot the gal's name. She's
The
an
actress, right? The actress.
Yes, yeah. The actress, and she spilled the beans, and it's very well done. Can you trust it? I would say, yeah, that one I think you can trust. I mean, not everything that's out there is going to be a total lie. I mean, things do leak through, things do slip through the cracks, and I believe that is one of those shows or one of those presentations that is being truthful.
When you say something like that, like if you watch that movie and it goes back to the symbology and the numerology. So if you see that movie Nefarious and the Sound of Freedom, that so Nefarious, I thought was an amazing movie. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, the last time I looked, it's 33% green splat. I'm like, oh, there it is in your face, 33%
right
green splat. Now they've been trying to cover up the movie coming out, The Sound of Freedom with Jim and Tim. I mean, they're doing their best to just flatten that, put a lid on that, but it's not working. So they're trying so hard, but things get through the cracks. Like you said, things leak out, and then they have to do damage control.
This is why I say to folks, David, everybody needs to activate. So you just can't rely on me and David and others to do podcasts, to have websites, to do blogs. If more and more people do it, and more people are pushing the truth out there, or at least getting people to critically think and move beyond the official narratives, all of that stuff, then they have even less control, right? Because what they want to do with you and they want to do with me is they will deplatform us. But you have to be resourceful too, and you have to be resilient, which means you go find another vehicle to be able to get your message out. They might be able to ding you initially, and if you have a large YouTube subscriber base, as an example, and then they shoot your channel, then you're going to start someplace else, and you're going to have to build it up again. But for those of us who are doing this work and you have a large YouTube channel, I highly, highly recommend that in parallel, you also create and build your alternative platforms like on BitChute, Odyssey.
Niño's Corner, that's what I did.
Yes, you have to do that, because at some point, because they want you to believe they're winning this thing hands down.
Yeah.
And we can
beat them at their own game. Like
we're putting up a good fight, David. I really do.
By me being the Pied Piper of the normies, I'm going to put this on YouTube, by the way. So this will go on YouTube and Niño's Corner.tv. Edited version will be on YouTube, but I don't think there's any edits in this, to be honest with you. I think
we're keeping it YouTube friendly.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to have backup platforms, no doubt about it, to fight this war accordingly.
You have to. And I think I mentioned this on the last show. I know a lot of folks, they're really comfortable with YouTube. They like it. They know how to use it and all that stuff. And, but you really have to support the other video platforms. You have to go there, subscribe to it. Because tomorrow, David's channel can get shot. Mine can get shot. And That's the reality of the world
That's
that
just
we're
what it
living in.
is. It is. That's just what it is.
And the more reach you have, the more subscribers you have, you become a bullseye. You're on their radar.
Absolutely.
No
And
question about
I
it.
keep that, I'm mindful of this all the time. And I get nervous every time I do an interview. I send it to an editing team, but it's really sad that we have to live in this type of world right now. I mean, this is not America. This is not this is, people need to understand, it never was, right? I mean, it's always been controlled. It's always been, would you say Masonic control, occult? Who's the main, what's the core of all this?
Well, that's a good question, right? I mean, so
Satanic, demonic?
we satanic, yes, we have. It is a satanic system, okay, and but it all goes back. We look at the Freemasons, the Masons, and it being a Masonic system. The United States was actually founded by Freemasons,
Yeah.
but it goes beyond the Freemasons. So it rolls up into the Jesuits, the Vatican. It goes up through the black nobility, which was, evolved back during the days of Rome. It goes back to Babylon. So the way I look at this is this: people like to say, okay, who is the controlling party in this whole thing? And what I've concluded is, in all likelihood, it probably all goes back up through the crown, ultimately goes up through the crown. Above the crown, I'm convinced that there are unseen forces that are involved. And some people might think that's crazy, but I'm convinced that that's the case, because a lot of what's going on, folks, it's not pro-humanity.
No, I
That
agree with you. I agree with you.
the evil that's going on comes from someplace else. It doesn't come from a human being.
No,
It doesn't
I
come
agree
from,
with you 1,000%.
yeah. So you have
Principalities and entities. What is it? The Bible discusses this. This is, we're not fighting anything of the flesh, right? This is something that's out of our scope of our five senses. I believe, whether it's highly intelligent, look, let's just say it, extraterrestrials, whether it's demonic souls, presence. I don't know. It's a force though that hates humanity. It absolutely hates humanity. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the conclusion I've come to, because take a look around and take a look at what's going on. The perpetual wars, as an example. I mean, the perpetual wars are nothing more than it's a blood sacrifice. That's really what it is. It's to send your children, your sons and daughters out to war to spill blood.
In masses.
That's that's blood sacrifice stuff. And a lot of people don't want to hear that either, because they're bought into the whole
freedom.
Military freedom. We got to preserve democracy. None of this stuff is about preserving your freedom, your liberty, or democracy. And it's not even supposed to be a democracy. We're supposed to be a republic, not a democracy. It drives me crazy when people keep using the word democracy. But you're not free. Okay. Anybody who thinks they're free, you're not free. In fact, 4th of July, what I do on my blog, I've been doing this for years now. I put Happy Dependence Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're not independent. This country lost its dependence. I mean, its independence going back. If you have to put a stake in the ground, with the Act of 1871, when they formulated the District of Columbia, the sovereign city state.
Right. Yeah.
That came right after the Civil War. The Civil War was not about slavery. I'm not saying slavery didn't exist, but slavery was the story you were sold.
That's how they got the blacks to fight as well, correct?
That's how they got everybody to fight.
Right.
And it was all about the oligarchs. It was, at the time, the international bankers wanting to disrupt this thing called the United States of America and the principles that America had put in place, the founding fathers had put in place. And our principles, when this country was put together, weren't in sync with what the internationalists wanted. So the Civil War was designed intentionally designed to create hostilities and to break the nation into two. And then once the war was over, money was exhausted. And that's when the bankers came in and said, you know what, we'll fund you. We'll loan you money to rebuild your war-torn country. Well, after that, it was the Act of 1871. And then 40 years after the Act of 1871, we had the Federal Reserve Act of 1913.
1913, yeah.
And that's when it was all over with the Federal Reserve Act. Because, folks, the Federal Reserve is a private bank run by the internationalist oligarchs. Okay? And they're charging interest on the money. And it's gotten to the point now, it got to this point a long time ago, where all of your taxes are not even covering the interest, the alleged interest on the loans. And in the Constitution, it says that the Congress is responsible for coining money, not an outside bank. The Federal Reserve, as the old saying is as federal as Federal Express.
Yeah.
All right. And if the United States coined its own money, if the Treasury created its own money, there should be no taxes. Why is that? It's because the government owns the money. So you're not going to
They're IOUs.
You're not going to charge interest to yourself. It's like the example I use, David. Let's just say, you're able to print your own money and you have somebody comes in that's going to put a deck in on your house. But you're able to print your own money. And that guy is willing to accept your printed money. Well, you just make that transaction. There's no interest. There's nothing like that. Because I make the money, I make the money. I don't need to charge interest. So there's no need for taxes. The whole reason why you have taxes is because this was a scheme that was put in place that started with the Federal Reserve Act. And now you go to work between state, local, federal, you're doling out 40 cents on a dollar outside of you. So you're taking in 60 cents on a dollar because everybody's got their hands in your pocket. And then they had this little gimmick where it's like, well, we're not going to raise taxes, but then we're being surcharged for everything.
Yeah.
Right? There's a fee for this, a fee for that. Tolls.
Yeah. Whenever someone tells me I own my house free and clear, I'm like, no, you don't.
No, you do not.
Don't pay your property taxes. See what happens. See how fast they take your house.
Exactly. That's right. So that's I use that example as well. Property taxes is a perpetual lien on the property that you don't own. You're renting.
You don't ever own anything. You own nothing.
Even your car.
Yeah.
You're paying property taxes on your car in a lot of states. Here in North Carolina, property tax on a car that I bought, I own. So the whole system, I know
it needs to go. It needs to go. It needs to go, gone, out forever.
The whole system is corrupt. It's corrupt to its core.
Yeah.
Corrupt. And you have to understand something. These congressmen, these senators, these House representatives, the Supreme Court, the presidency, your government resides on sovereign land that is not part of the Republic of the United States, which means we are under foreign occupation. And we have been.
It all goes to the crown, correct?
It goes back to the crown. Yeah. It does go back to the crown. And, it's like lawyers, they take an allegiance to the bar. The bar goes back to the crown.
Yeah.
When you go into court, there's no constitution. The courtroom is ruled by admiralty and maritime law, but you just don't know that. In fact, most lawyers don't even know that.
No, they don't.
And there are judges that, in all likelihood, don't even know. They just operate within the system that they were brought into. So the whole system is upside down, and what people have to do is you have to question everything. If what most people do, what I found, David, is they cherry pick what it is they want to let go of and what they want to hold on to. I see this all the time. I mean, not to go back to the music. Well, I go back to,
the Bible.
I go back to like the music as an example, right? So I talk, about the music industry and what it's all about. And people will say to me, I agree with you, Mike, except this band here who I like, I don't think that I don't think that they have been tainted by this system at all. I think that they were organic and all that. I'm like, that's not, no. They're all tainted by it. They're all
Yes,
touched
yeah.
by it, all of it. So as long as we continue to make exceptions, this system will continue. So there can't be any exceptions. You have to say, okay, everything has to be open for discussion. Everything has to be open for debate. Everything has to be looked at, researched, and investigated. And if you have little pet projects or pet beliefs that you have, really, you got to say, okay, I need to take a look at that. And it could be very uncomfortable. I'm not saying it's not uncomfortable. It could be very uncomfortable because people want to believe these things, and I don't get into the religion discussion because a lot of people really get irritated, but
That's where it all began.
Even religion, we have to question.
Yeah.
We have to question religion, we have to.
Well, that was really the conception of all of this was religion. That was the first form of control, really, correct?
Yeah. Well,
we can go into that into a whole nother discussion.
Yes. And we do have to take a look at religion.
Yeah.
It's core to what they did with religion. I'll do this real quick. They didn't want a person, a human, an individual, to have a direct connection to the divine, a connection between you and the creator, you and the source. They didn't want that because, God forbid, you should be able to formulate, your connection to spirit. So they said, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to have a middleman, and the middleman's going to tell you how to worship and what to believe and what not to believe and what books you've got to read and what books not to read. That's what that's what religion's all about. It's a middleman, and they inserted, that middleman in the process in order to keep you from really experiencing and
at the same
optimizing
time
your spirituality.
Created wars.
Yes.
Created their desired harvests from the warring against each other. Whose religion's right?
Right. Look at the Crusades.
Yeah.
With the Crusades, I don't know. It's we have to really take a step back, and some people are waiting and waiting and waiting because somebody's going to show up and fix everything. And my attitude is, and my approach is that God helps those who help themselves.
And are extensions of the divine.
You have to move off the dime. And because I can't do this by myself. You can't do this by yourself. We can get the word out. We can make people aware. But like I mentioned before, if we can increase drastically the number of people who are putting information out versus watching, being spectators,
right,
then they really have a control problem. They're having a control problem now, but we can really give them a real control problem. How are they going to squash everything? They can't squash everything. They can't. So anyway, we I got a long ways from the Beatles on that, but that's okay. Folks,
yeah. Mike, where can people find you? Sage of Quay and Rumble?
Yeah, Sage of Quay. Just go to my hub website, Sage of Quay, SAGEOFQUAY.com. And all of my platforms are there. I just released a new album, No More Gods. You can listen to it and download it on Reverb Nation and my SoundCloud. Just go there.
I'm going to put this on ninoscorner.tv right now, and then I'm going to put this on YouTube later. So I got to send it to my editing team, make sure we didn't say anything fucking crazy. But
I understand.
But this is going on ninoscorner.tv, and then it will be on YouTube. So, Mike, thanks. This is
you're welcome, David.
So eye-opening. Let's do another one, man. Let's do religion
anytime.
next.
Okay.
All right, Mike. Thank you so much, man. God bless you.
Bye-bye, folks.